Hey guys, welcome back to the Joe Silverback Show. I'm your host, Joe Bunton, and I just got back from the end of April coastal sea walk, low tide, the billions and billions of mollusks, the Donax variabilis that wash up later with all these beautiful multicolored seashells that people love to gather. Right now it's their breeding time. Imagine walking in the sand and there's billions, single muscle guys putting their filters up, filtering as the tide washes over, and they're getting their microorganisms. Also keep in mind one thing for all you potential future foragers, it's a good educational thing. There's billions of these guys, and they'd be great in soups, and you can eat them just like that. I know, ladies, that's not so interesting, but when it gets down to it, you might have to. So I'm walking along the coast. I do my walk, and on the way back, I'm just wading in the water. And there's a prehistoric feeling when you walk on these 10 billion little creatures underneath your feet, especially when you understand that they may have been here for 100, 200, 300 million years, and they may be here for another 100 million years, long when we are just a memory in their feeding habits. I don't say that sarcastically or cynically, I just say that realistically, in terms of we're an incredible predator, we're an incredible organism, but we are disconnected from nature, and our disconnection from nature allows us to do all kinds of things that end up being very harmful for not only the rest of the life forms out there, but for our own children and our own children's future. That's something that I'd like you guys to, I've gotten a lot of feedback on that. Really one of the best books, and I've already showed you guys, and the reason why I mentioned this book is because here you have a brilliant mind synthesizing all this research and having 6 decades of his own research. But Edward Wilson, E.O. Wilson, any one of his books are a great start. If you look at Consilience, it's a brilliantly constructed book, and one of the things that Wilson is on the cutting edge of for the last, I think my knowledge of him goes back to my 20s, so I've known about him for 30 years, and one of the most tantalizing and inspiring and interesting and intriguing and synthesizing aspects of Wilson's brain and how he works is his ability to understand ecosystems. And ecosystems is something that we're a part of, like it or not. We just need to figure out if we're, really going to reinvent the wheel, or whether we're going to go back to a deeper awareness of how we fit into an existing ecosystem that we're connected to, that is more brilliant than we are. That's the juxtaposition, folks. Are we part of the exemptionists who think that we have an exemption from the natural world because we can continue to create new technologies that will allow us to repair whatever we've broken? That's essentially what we are, believing that we can do. Or are we along my line where we understand that we're going to have to follow some geniuses and some intelligence like the E.O. Wilsons of this world, who are actually looking at strategies in which we can live within an ecosystem, maintaining a certain balance of our own human organisms within that. The carrying capacity is what I'm getting at. So each living organism has its own individual carrying capacity. The planet has its carrying capacity, and we can pretend that it doesn't exist, and we can pretend that we can recreate it, and we can pretend that we can go off, as we're planning right now, into other planets and you know, map new territory and make new territory. But my faith again is in the seed. Again, my example is the coastal redwood. The seed is as big as my thumb knuckle. I'm a California guy. I've spent a lot of times in the redwoods. Anyone who has ever seen the redwoods, and if you haven't, just watch a video. It's an amazing, amazing forest, and it's an amazing tree. So if you want some humility, stand before the coastal redwood tree and understand that this gigantic thing that started from a seed can get up to 300 feet tall. It can live 2,500 years. The redwood has its partner in the giant sequoia. This giant sequoia is a little bit greater girth and maybe not as so high, and it can, you know, some of the oldest sequoias have passed 3,000 years. I think the oldest is around 3,200. So if you compare that to the burning of the cathedral at Notre Dame, where we've, you know, been slapped in the face, and we've been, you know, for just a moment in our meta anxiety, we've been forced to analyze perspective of time. So going back to 1160, when the original Notre Dame, or the original basilica, was created, and then 1260 another one, and then however long after that you know, somebody with a brilliant design idea had of putting them all together under one cathedral, and the different stages of that. But you know, you're dating that back 859 years. Well, the coastal redwood has seen 3 lives of the beginning phases of Notre Dame. It's a very, very humbling experience, folks, to walk in the woods, real woods, with ancient forests, ancient trees that can give us some kind of perspective of our smallness in this world. And we need to have a balance with our sense of smallness, because otherwise we just stay focused indoors, and indoors focuses us 99% of the time on our human accomplishments, which sometimes are incredibly brilliant, but dwarf in the comparison of evolutionary accomplishment. When you look at a mollusk that's been around for 100 million more years than we have, or 200 million more years, and you understand that might be around for hundreds of millions of years after us, that should give you some pause. That should give you some pause, and that's part of what the natural world brings. So I'm walking along the coast, and there's plovers and curlews and godwits, you know, munching on these mollusks and crabs, and it's the season. It's the springtime. It's the tide springtime, and it's a feeding frenzy, and it's a reproductive frenzy, and we could live off of those mollusks. I'm just stop for a moment, let the tide wash over my feet, and a V formation that our military imitated, in our aerospace engineers in the very beginning of aerospace engineering imitated, a V formation of brown pelicans, prehistoric creatures, came passing above. I counted 80 of them, and they moved down, and then they broke into different groups, cruising along the waves, lifting up over the spindrift and the breaking waves. Some of them dive bombing when they found a feeding place, just straight down. Prehistoric creatures. 30 years of living at the seashore, walking the seashore, running the seashore, doing yoga and exercise at the seashore, going into the ocean before my children woke up, floating in the fog, floating on my back, watching these prehistoric creatures, dive bombing for fish, bobbing up and down on the swells, eye to eye contact, not moving, with a prehistoric creature, not in a zoo, not in a wild animal park, in wild primitive places of nature. Sitting at the seashore, the whole population of people yesterday stopped. Dolphins, 3 of them just flipping out of the water. A week before that, a pod of gray whales passing on their migratory circuit. These are humbling experiences, and also experiences that we need to have more of, and we need to experience with our children, with our husbands, with our wives, boyfriends, girlfriends, mates, partners. And we have to ask ourselves questions that John Muir asked, Theodore Roosevelt asked, the serious thinkers of our past asked, and that is, what's the monument that we want to leave behind for our progeny for the next 7 generations, or the next 70 generations, if we are ever to be so lucky? Read E.O. Wilson's last chapter in Consilience. The last chapter is To What End? Google E.O. Wilson. He's 89 years old. Google his project right now. I forget what they call it, the Half Earth Project. Brilliant concept. Brilliant concept about putting aside half the land mass to allow species preservation through allowing natural ecologies to remain intact as they've been intact for eons. And we don't need it all. But we do need to preserve the water reservoirs. The water reservoirs are draining. Anyone who knows anything about water understands that the devastation to human beings and the suffering that's going to continue, and that's going to, I think, implode or explode, whatever way you want to look at it, if we don't pay attention to it. China's water system is disastrous. Ours is really bad. What does that mean? What it means is it's the same as with this, with this balance that we need in terms of sustainability. So the oceans, we can't deplete the waters from the oceans. We are relying on the resources from the seas. And so these microbiologists, these biologists, these mammalian biologists, these marine biologists, they know their niches, they know their research, they know the data. And I'm not a fear-mongering guy. I'm only interested in all of us looking at heart, mind, harmony. Who do we want to make ourselves into now that we are in control of our future? What are our choices going to be? These are very powerful things to consider, as the disparity between what we can sustain for the upcoming peoples. We got some serious ecological things to really consider, and this ties in with deep awareness of the natural world, nature inside, nature outside. I want everybody to be able to put their feet in that water like I did today. I want my grandchildren and great-grandchildren and their great-grandchildren to be able to walk freely down at the seashore and see this beauty all around them and be transformed by living organisms different from themselves that have something to teach us in here and out there. Okay, that's my 15 minutes. Namaste. Joe Silverback.